So you got some action on the table. You're moving forward with the clients. They are excited about doing something about their lives, growing towards a new goal and taking action, taking those steps forward. How do we make sure they do that? A big part of that, along with creating a plan with them, is creating accountability. And today we're going to be looking at 3 primary methods of accountability and kind of validating each of these and recognizing the developmental nature of coaching that will see a transformation in how accountability is run throughout a coaching engagement. That's a lot of words. Before we even get started, let's jump in. So there's 3 types of accountability in general, and the first type is a parental approach, and especially a parental assumption on the part of the coach, where the coach is expecting this individual to need to be asked to report back to the coach themselves. So at the end of a coaching session, or at the end of at least setting up an action plan, the coach will often say in this state, so when are you going to let me know that you've accomplished this? How do you want to let me know? How will you check in? When are you going to report back to me? And so it sounds like a little bit like the parent whose son or daughter are heading out for a date, and you're like, hey, when are you going to check in? It's not necessarily bad, but it is, we would want it to only be a starting point or an exception. So those questions that I just shared, I would not say are the model of accountability setting. Instead, we want to generally start with the next form of accountability as the default, as the starting point. And that is the design assumption, that we are assuming that this person will need some co-creation around how they will hold themselves accountable. So we've got this desire to accomplish a project by next Thursday, and we've built out the plan about what they're going to be doing to make sure they're thoroughly preparing to do the project and present on it very well for next Thursday. Well, at that point, the coach should ask a question of, how do you want to hold yourself accountable? How do you want to make sure you follow through here? As you consider the things that get in the way, what are you going to do to help you stay committed throughout this next week and a half? These questions are beginning a brief discussion of maybe 2 or 3 follow-up questions of, how do you want to stay on track? Follow-up questions might be, okay, so who are you going to check in with? Okay, you want to check in with me. When do you want to check in? So yeah, we might go there. We might make the coach the accountability partner, or we might say, hey, I'm happy that you are wanting to check in with me, and we'll definitely check in next time we speak. But if I can challenge you as a coach, I would also encourage you to consider a coworker or a family member or a friend who can also check in with you, so that you're continuing to build your own accountability structure. Another way to co-design accountability would be to ask about what system they would have in place to help them hold themselves accountable. These have to do with reminders they might set for themselves, whether it's an alarm on their phone, a calendar piece, or something that's a little bit less in the noise. Like if you have 100 sticky notes on a computer, adding another isn't going to be a great accountability measure. The same is true if you have a reminder going off every 15 minutes. It becomes noise. So we can challenge and ask questions around how they might want to hold themselves accountable with an object that they have that has some sort of significance, or with a visual that they have on the back of their office door that's going to remind them every time they see that, they are going to remember to take that action that they committed to. So we can be creative. We can co-design the accountability. And there's an assumption that this person is capable of following through with a light level of accountability from the coach themselves. So this is where we want to start. It's in this middle point of a coaching relationship, and that's honestly where things should begin. Now, the third option is usually what happens after working with a client for some time, or maybe working with someone who's very familiar with coaching and automatically come in to the coaching relationship expecting to have a less accountability-driven approach in the coaching experience. So the coach and the client talk about the action steps that the client would like to take, their plan around that, and then we might say, okay, anything else that you want in order to know that you're going to follow through on this plan? Anything missing from this plan? we're offering that space where they could mention that they need some accountability, but it's okay if the coach just steps back. When a coach steps into asking, how do you want to hold yourselves accountable? There is that little bit of a thought that maybe this coach doesn't fully believe that I can do this. So instead of even asking about accountability, sometimes we might, after a long track record of success, we may just check in from time to time. Hey, we haven't set any specific accountability measures. How satisfied are you with the way you're holding yourself accountable to these goals that we're setting up here? That's fine. And what we're doing is we're demonstrating trust because of a track record. And so the questions we ask and the amount of questions we ask around accountability, those decrease. So now we have a 3-part spectrum: parental on the one side, open and trusting on the other side, and really a co-designed middle space. We expect the coaching relationship to be dynamic, where the more success a client is experiencing, the coach is going to offer just encouragement and check-ins on the accountability structures that they have, assuming and trusting the client is able to follow through completely on their own. Whereas if there's a pattern of maybe, let's say, 2 sessions where the client has not followed through, then we increase over time the level of accountability, and we kind of co-design how we want the relationship to work in terms of how direct the coach is going to be. So maybe for 6 sessions, maybe for 3 to 6 sessions, we'll say the coach is going to be more directive. When are you going to report back to me? Let's make sure to report back. I'll check in with you 2-3 times this week. I'll expect something from you. Does that work for you? Note there's still some partnership. The coach is being a bit directive, but there's still partnership. The intention here, though, is while we're in that more parental, direct approach for a shorter period of time, every time there's success, really every time the client is reporting back, we want to be discussing what they're learning about themselves, their situation, their actions, and what they're learning about how to best hold themselves accountable. We want to highlight that the coaching relationship is not designed to keep them in a dependent state on their coach to help them stay accountable, but we want to help facilitate that growth process by temporarily being more direct. And as a pattern of success grows, we come back to the co-designed approach where they're creating accountability structures, systems, and relationships on their own to drive their progress. Now, these are often associated with the associate level, the parental approach, the professional level, the co-designed approach, and the master level, the full trusting approach. And yet, any coach of any level needs to be able to flex between the 3 approaches in order to meet the needs of the client where they are and depending on what patterns they're showing. I hope this is helpful, and this is a good thing to practice and see in action, to listen for as a coach that's experienced is doing accountability after setting up some action steps. Keep an ear out for which of these approach or where on that spectrum they might be demonstrating accountability questions and structures in the coaching session. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Practice, keep coaching, and thank you for tuning in.